The following announcement has been paid for by Journey into Wrestling. Things seem to be changing around here, and I'm talking podcasts, brother.
Journey into Comics Network and no JIW? Where's the wrestling?
That's just it, brah. We're making a comeback. JIW is taking over.
Butt stuff, podcastrophe, the Puhr Rapport, all these new guys on the scene. We're about to show them what podcasting is all about, Chico.
Why don't you tell them when they can hear us, Nate?
Every other Wednesday, right here on the Journey into Wrestling Network.
Anything less is just too civilized.
New world order.
The following is a Journey into Comics Network production.
Happy Halloween, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 9 of the Puhr Rapport. I am your host, Andrew Puhr, and I want to thank you for joining me today. Now, I have a ton of news I want to go over with you, but seeing today's Halloween, I thought I'd kind of start with kind of how I spent my Halloween weekend. I really can't do much celebrating tonight because I'll be traveling to Colorado early tomorrow morning for work, so I got to do all of my celebrating the weekend before, like most people tend to do. Now, one thing that's kind of nice when you have a group of friends is that you get to do kind of a group-themed costumes, or if you're in a relationship or have a partner, you can do a couple's costume. So on Friday night, went out to the bars in my area and had a little pre-gaming ahead of time, and a couple of my friends and I, we dressed up as the Scooby Gang, or the Mystery Gang. So I dressed up as Shaggy. So I had the green shirt, the brown pants, had the kind of the fluffed up shaggy hair. My fiance was Velma, so I had the whole orange get up. Another friend of ours that's a couple friends of ours, they were dressed up as Fred and Daphne. Had the full white and the purple and all that. Then one of my friends actually got a Scooby-Doo hoodie that, like, when you zip up and you put the hood down, it actually looks like the cartoon Scooby, which was pretty cool. And we took a picture of that, and I'll probably put it up on my Instagram later. It was just fun because it's kind of nice that you get to kind of do something as a group activity. You don't have to settle on doing something that's just unique, that just individual to you. It's something that you can kind of share with someone else, and it makes it more fun going into it. It's kind of like an accountability person. So went out, got celebrated that, and kind of going to the bars on a Friday night. Sometimes, especially this time of year, you have people who do dress up and you have people who don't, and more often than not, a lot of places we went to were not dressed up, so we didn't really have that theme. One bar we did to go, there was a very dance-happy Spider-Man that was just bobbing and weaving and swing dancing. It was a little unusual for Spider-Man to do, but I guess if you're Spider-Man, swing dancing probably would be the dancing that you would like to do. So that was fun. And then Saturday, dressed up as Ron Swanson, so I went from full beard that I wear normally to a goatee, which I wore as Shaggy because I wanted to keep the mustache to use for Ron Swanson. So I'm in my red polo and black pants and my mustache for Ron Swanson on Saturday, and then my fiance dressed up as breakfast food because Ron Swanson loves a brunette with breakfast food, and that's who my fiance was. So that was fun again, and got to go to a house party and have some amazing sangria and beer pong and all that fun stuff you can do, and it's kind of nice to, after a stressful week of work, to go out and just have a good time. And it was just made for a nice little Halloween. And I know on Friday, while we were kind of pre-gaming, hanging out at my apartment, we were watching Nightmare Before Christmas, which is the kind of the debated movie. Is it more Halloween? Is it more Christmas? Is it good just to watch in between? I think it's more Halloween just because of the characters and the story and the amount of time you actually spend in the Halloween world. So that's kind of my views on it. I know some people think it's more of a Christmas movie because that was kind of the whole point of the story, is someone that wanted to find something different. So we found Christmas World and all that fun stuff. And it's a movie I haven't seen all that recently before then, so it was kind of nice to kind of rewatch that. And even though it wasn't directed by Tim Burton, it's still a very well done movie. And you see with all this claymation work that it took God knows how many hours to put all that together and make a movie. So it's still a good classic movie to watch at Halloween time. And I guess at Christmas too, you could always pull it out again. I definitely lean more towards Halloween though. And I guess with that, I'll kind of dive into the news. And there's a lot of news to talk about today, some more depressing or sad than others, but I'll kind of dive right into it. Before I get into kind of the political or the big headline news, I kind of want to talk about the Linkin Park and Friends, the Chester Bennington tribute show they did at the Hollywood Bowl over the weekend. Now, it was the first concert that Linkin Park has done since Chester Bennington's death. So it was already pretty sad to begin with, and they streamed it live on YouTube, and they had countless people come from all over, and they had a lot of bands and people that were close to the band come. I know I kind of have the list written down here. They had members of Yellow Card, Bush, Bring Me the Horizon, Machine Gun Kelly, Korn, A Day to Remember, Sum 41, System of a Down, Blink-182, Avenged Sevenfold. And they also did a big video tribute that featured U2, Paul McCartney, Duff McKagan, 30 Seconds to Mars, Dave Gahan, and Metallica. So they had that Linkin Park, which is a band I've loved. I got to see them live a couple years ago, and I'm thankful I got to see that with one of my best friend who I've always listened to Linkin Park in his car with, and it really got me into the band more than I did when I was growing up. So I think it's really nice they're able to do this tribute thing, and it's hard to say if Linkin Park will cease to exist moving forward. If it's hard to do Linkin Park without Chester Bennington's vocals, because they're very iconic and they're very appropriate to the song, and I can't imagine any of his hits or any of the band's hits that he was such a prominent part of and that his voice was so impactful on than some of their classics. I know they did during the show they played the song Numb, which is one of their biggest hits, and they didn't have a vocalist. They had the band up there, and they purposely left the vocalist position empty. They just had a beam of light with a mic, an empty mic stand with a wreath around it, because his voice was so impactful and so strong and passionate in that song, and there's just no one who can replace that. And it was hard to see that image, that video of them just playing without Chester. And I know in other songs they did that night, they had singers and other artists that I listed earlier fill in, but it's definitely not going to be the same. And I think it's going to be hard to move forward, but bands have done it before. Bands have brought in someone to kind of carry them through, but it's not going to be the same, and I honestly don't know where they're going to go forward with it. But I'm glad they're able to do this for the fans and for the people who loved Linkin Park and Chester Bennington, and my heart still goes out to his family who are still dealing with his loss, and his bandmates who've been like family to him his whole life. So thanks for everything, Chester and Linkin Park, for being a big part of my life growing up. And I guess kind of directing from this into some more less than savory news, and this is actually, there's two bits of news that have dropped recently. Last week, George H.W. Bush Sr., who's a 93-year-old former president, recently came out, there were sexual assault allegations against him. The first was Heather Lind, who is an actress on that TV show on AMC Turn, Washington Spies. And her statement was that he touched her from behind and told her a dirty joke, and this all happened in front of George H.W. Bush's wife, Barbara. Apparently this happened 4 years ago. And And those of you who've seen video either from the show I talked about last week, where they did the hurricane relief tribute, he's been in a wheelchair since his late 80s, so he's been there for about 5 years now. And when he does pictures, he kind of has to do them from the waist. And he's come out and apologized, and since Heather Lynn made a statement, 3 other women have come out and made similar allegations. And I actually have a statement that the spokesperson for the president, former President George W. Bush, had said, and it says, "At age 93, President Bush has been confined to a wheelchair for roughly 5 years, so his arm falls on the lower waist of people with whom he takes pictures. To try and put people at ease, the president routinely tells the same joke, and on occasion he has patted women's rears in what he intended to be a good-natured manner. Some have seen it as innocent, others clearly view it as inappropriate. To anyone he has offended, President Bush apologizes most sincerely." And in what I've seen recently, I don't even think George W. Bush can really speak much for himself. I think his... I don't know. He's at 93. He's not definitely in the best of shape, and he didn't speak at the event last week. And in that video he did, he just said one word in that whole video, and that was "thank you," and that was still kind of jumbled and not quite there. So I think he's not as communicative as he was even a few years ago. So it's hard. I'm a little conflicted on this because sexual allegations are no joking matter. They're very serious. At the same time, this is a 93-year-old man who may not have full understanding of what he's doing and how it's being construed. As anyone knows, a lot of people have older relatives who sometimes can say or do things that may not be maybe inappropriate and they wouldn't do, and maybe it's just that he's no longer in his right mind or has full control of his faculties in that regard. And being a former president, he's definitely in more spotlight as any celebrity or someone of well-known status is. So I think he's right for apologizing for these actions, or what these actions have been construed as, even if that wasn't his intention. I think it's just best for him to kind of stay out of the spotlight and try and lay low. At his age, he's probably not going to be around too much longer. Like I said, he's not in a best state. He's wheelchair confined. Looks like he's missing some of his teeth. He's no longer really verbal. I honestly don't know how his future is going to be, but I don't want to see kind of his last couple years be tainted by this. But this is the same thing we saw earlier this summer with all the Bill Cosby allegations, stuff that he did at a young age, and now he's paying the price for it. And he also is older and is up there, and he's paying for crimes he did commit then. But this is all stuff, at least as far as we know, that's happened very recently since he's been wheelchair bound and since he's been this. And it's might be that with everything that's been happening lately, people are more inclined to come out, or people are thinking about this. But I'm not trying to say that what he did was okay, because it's not. I just hope we're able to move forward and he's able to kind of atone for what he did and make it right with those that have come forward, just so that we can, so everything can kind of be settled from there. Also came out, and it was kind of a pretty intense weekend, and leading into late Sunday night / Monday morning regarding actor Kevin Spacey. So there was an actor, Anthony Rapp, who currently stars on the TV show Star Trek Discovery on CBS All Access, came out and said that when he was 14 and Kevin Spacey was 26, he received an unwelcome sexual advance involving an inebriated Spacey picking this 14-year-old kid up, putting him on a bed, and getting on top of him. This is when they were both actors on Broadway in different shows, but they were having kind of a cast party or an actor gathering at Kevin Spacey's apartment at the time, and the young actor being a part with most of the adults, he kind of went into a bedroom and just watched TV because he was bored, because that's not really the place that a young actor should be, around a bunch of 20-somethings or older while they're drinking. And I did children's theater. I've done adult shows when I was underage. And yes, there is cast parties after, and it's a place you go, and I've been there when there's been older people drinking and having a good time, but it was never anything like this, and usually I'm not the only child there, and it wasn't Broadway, New York, where there's a lot more pressure and stakes and excess, so it's easy to see that he would go there just because he's an actor, he knows other actors, so it doesn't seem unusual, and then people come out saying, like, why was he there in the first place? That thing just kind of happens. There's always, like, rap parties or other gatherings after a show to kind of celebrate and wind down, and that's even the case for younger actors. So, this has been about 30 years ago that this had happened, and with everything that's happened recently, the actor felt, with everything that's gone on with the Harvey Weinstein and everything else that's come up in the past few weeks, that he felt comfortable finally sharing it. I think we shared it with BuzzFeed, and it caught traction. And this led to Kevin Spacey making a statement on Twitter last night. I'm going to pull up the tweet here. He released a statement saying, "I have a lot of respect and admiration for Anthony Rapp as an actor. I'm beyond horrified to hear his story. I honestly do not remember the encounter. It would have been over 30 years ago. But if I did behave then as he describes, I owe him the sincerest apology for what would have been deeply inappropriate drunken behavior, and I am sorry for the feelings he describes, having cared with him all these years. This story has encouraged me to address other things about my life. I know there are stories out there about me, and that some have been fueled by the fact that I have been so protective of my privacy. As those close to me know, in my life I have had relationships with both men and women. I have loved and had romantic encounters with men throughout my life, and I choose now to live as a gay man. I want to deal with this honestly and openly, and that starts with examining my own behavior." So, he made the statement last night, and some have kind of praised the statement and owning up to his actions. Some view that statement as a PR smokescreen to pull focus from these allegations and then put it onto his sexual orientation, which he's been notoriously private about since that time period, of the fact that if he was heterosexual or homosexual. And it's even been kind of toyed with on the show that he's been a big part of, which is House of Cards, which is on Netflix, which brought him a lot of success in recent years. So he made the statement, officially came out through this Twitter tweet, and it's a lot of celebrities have come out since then saying that this isn't what you do, this isn't how you come out, you don't do this to come out, because being homosexual doesn't negate what you did, and I entirely agree with that. This does feel like an opportunistic tweet, and a lot of news articles after this point, instead of talking about the sexual assault allegations, were then putting articles out about the confirmation that Kevin Spacey is now out as gay. And it's really interesting that he also says that he chooses to live his life as a gay man, which is interesting because for many people, sexual orientation isn't a choice, and it might be that he's kind of flip-flopped or has gone forth in the realms of kind of bisexuality. So it's kind of interesting to see how this is kind of played out. But he's definitely not got a lot of love, and there's been issues. And even the creator of House of Cards came out and said in a statement, Anthony Rapp's story is deeply troubling. Sorry about that. It said, during the time I worked with Kevin Spacey, I never witnessed nor was aware of any inappropriate behavior on or off set. That said, I take the reports of such behavior seriously, and this is no exception. I feel for Mr. Rapp, and I support his courage. And after this happened, there's been a lot of reports and articles and tweets and everything that's happened this morning, or yesterday morning. And interesting enough, Netflix had announced today through, I believe, Variety, that House of Cards will officially end with the upcoming Season 6. And it's interesting. I don't know if this was always the plan to announce it today. The show I've watched since the season 1. It's starting to run its course. I don't know where they can kind of take this show beyond where they left off on season 5. So season 6 does seem like the right ending for that show, but it seemed very coincidental. It didn't seem at all coincidental that it was today. I think there's a connection between what's come out against Kevin Spacey today and this Kevin Spacey starring vehicle that is House of Cards. And I think Netflix is trying to distance themselves from this. And the only way to do so is to kind of no longer continue to do business with this show. It's still a great show. I'm a big into political thrillers and shows of that days. I think it's the right move on everyone's part to kind of end the show after the next season. And by the time the season comes out, which will probably be sometime next spring, some of this will have died down, but I'm assuming as it gets closer, it'll probably get brought back up when we start seeing the trailers for the new season. So we'll kind of have to see where this wraps up, but it's definitely something worth talking about, and I'm sure over the next week or so, we might have more people come forward. We might have more resolution from this or an additional statement from either Anthony Rapp or Kevin Spacey. So we'll kind of have to see where this goes. And I guess with that, I will move on to the other big item that kind of happened yesterday morning, which was more resolution from the Mueller investigation into what's been going on with the Trump administration and the collusion with Russia. So I'm going to kind of read the full article, because there's an article that NPR put out today, or yesterday, that I think is worth just reading over in full. And the article is titled, Russia Tried to Infiltrate Trump Campaign, Mueller Documents Confirm. And this was updated as of 4:20 yesterday evening. It says, apparent Russian agents began reaching out to Donald Trump's presidential campaign as early as March 2016, the Justice Department established in documents released Monday, which appeals for partnership and offers to help, including dirt on Trump's opponent Hillary Clinton. That case is made in charging documents in the case of then-Trump foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos, who pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. The court documents got a little less focus early in the day than other indictments involving Trump's one-time campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, and a top aide, Rick Gates, who was Manafort's deputy and a business partner. Manafort and Gates pleaded not guilty in federal court Monday to all the charges announced earlier Monday. NPR's Barbara Sprunt reports. The two men were deemed a flight risk and put under house arrest. But the Papadopoulos matter speaks to the heart of the mandate for Justice Department Special Counsel Robert Mueller to examine potential connections between people in the Trump campaign and Russian influence mongers. What is now known is that Russia tried to infiltrate the Trump campaign and did so successfully, at least on some level. Put in context of other reporting around the Russia story, it is a remarkable establishment. The court documents also established that Russia promised thousands of emails that would have dirt on Clinton to Papadopoulos in April 2016. A trove of hacked Democratic emails were released by WikiLeaks 3 months later in the midst of the Democratic National Convention. I will tell you this, Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing, Trump said, appearing to encourage Russia to continue digging. His campaign denied he was doing that. I think he will probably be rewarded mightily by our press. Papadopoulos tried to set up additional meetings or contacts between people in the Trump campaign and Russians. There are many contacts according to the court documents which describe meetings or messages between Papadopoulos and at least two Russians, a professor in London and a woman. But what remains unknown is who are the high-ranking campaign officials Papadopoulos contacted, and what did those other officials do, if anything, with information Papadopoulos shared. It is known, however, that Donald Trump Jr., the son of the billionaire, organized and took meetings with Russian nationals who also promised dirt on Clinton. If it's what you say, Trump Jr. wrote to the association to set up the meeting, I love it. And that was in a statement he made in an email. Manafort and Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and key advisor, also attended the meeting at Trump Tower in June 2016. This is the first time a connection between the Trump campaign and Russia's attempt to interfere in the 2016 election has been established by the ironclad official government source. Reporting that has linked the Trump campaign and Russia's efforts has been dismissed by the White House and the president as fake news. Shortly after the charges against Manafort and Gates were announced, President Trump dismissed their significance. He said in 2 tweets, "Sorry, but this is years ago, before Paul Manafort was a part of the Trump campaign. But why aren't crooked Hillary and the Dems the focus? Also, there is no collusion." Papadopoulos' guilty plea is going... This is back in the rest of the article. Papadopoulos' guilty plea is going to be more difficult for him to downplay, although the White House tried to do on Monday. Today's announcement has nothing to do with the president or the campaign or campaign activity, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said at the White House press briefing. Of course, this is not true. Trump named Papadopoulos as foreign policy advisor to the campaign. Sanders, however, dismissed him as merely a volunteer member of an advisory council that met one time. Sanders tried to turn attention to the Clinton campaign instead, alleging it colluded with Russian intelligence to craft the so-called Steele dossier. The dossier, which collected opposition research on Trump that eventually focuses on his ties to Russia, was intentionally paid for by the conservative Washington Free Beacon website. This site is funded in large part by conservative donor Paul Singer, who was a Trump skeptic and backed Florida Republican Senator Mark Rubio for president. Research for the dossier was conducted by a firm called Fusion GPS, run by 2 former investigative reporters. They hired Chris Steele, a former British spy turned private investigator. Steele has ties to U.S. intelligence and is known as a Russian expert. He was hired to find more information about Trump ties in Russia than they couldn't get. When the primaries were over, the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee picked up the tab to keep the research going. Sanders called the dossier false information. Some of it has been confirmed by news outlets. Some of it is incendiary and has not been independently confirmed. Sanders dismissed the meeting at Trump Tower between Trump Jr. and Russian nationals as simply a meeting that took place and routine. It was not routine. Opposition research is, but not seeking it from foreign governments. Sanders, though, contended the Clinton campaign and DNC's millions of dollars paid for the Oppo research file that it never used was far worse than Trump Jr.'s meeting or anything coming out of Monday's court documents. They took one meeting and nothing came of it, she said. Sanders also said the president had no reaction because it doesn't have anything to do with us. This goes on to say this is not the end of the Mueller investigation. There could be more details to come, either from Mueller or the congressional committees that are investigating the Russian imbroglio. Court documents indicate that Papadopoulos has met with the government on numerous occasions to provide information and answer questions. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is also investigating Russia-Trump ties, in a statement called Monday's developments a significant and sobering step in what will be a complex and likely lengthy investigation by the special counsel. That is why it is imperative that Congress take action now to protect the independence of the special counsel, however high his investigation may lead. His office also said he wants a bipartisan member of Congress to make clear to President Trump that issuing pardons to any of his associates or himself would be unacceptable and result in immediate bipartisan action by Congress. The president has the unfettered ability to pardon anyone for federal crimes, but that applies only to federal crimes. Some officials, including Manafort, could also face charges at the state level in New York, for example. Warner also put the guilty plea and indictments in the context of broader developments on the Trump-Russia investigation over the past several months. This is just the latest in a series of undisclosed contacts, misleading public statements, potentially compromising information, and highly questionable actions from the time of the Trump campaign that together remain a cause for deep concern and continued investigation, he said. And there are indications that Papadopoulos is cooperating with federal agents. It is in the best interest of our client, George Papadopoulos, that we refrain from commenting on George's case, his lawyers Thomas W. Breen and Robert W. Stanley said in a short statement obtained by NPR's Kerry Johnson. They then added, "We will have the opportunity to comment on George's involvement when called upon by the court at a later date. We look forward to telling all the details of George's story at that time." Trump and other conservatives have tried to sully Mueller's name, hoping to delegitimize his findings as politically motivated. One Mueller ally, fired former FBI Director James Comey, took to his newly revealed Twitter account to seemingly and cryptically back up the special counsel. The tweet was, "Man's capacity for justice makes democracy possible, but man's inclination to injustice makes democracy necessary." Reinhold Niebuhr. The charges, Manafort and Gates were charged with conspiracy against the United States, conspiracy to launder money, and other offenses. The two were expected in court in Washington by the afternoon. The Justice Party indictment on Manafort and Gates contained 12 counts: conspiracy against the United States, conspiracy to launder money, unregistered agent of a foreign principal, false and misleading FARA statements, false statements, and 7 counts of failure to file reports of foreign bank and financial accounts. Papadopoulos pleaded guilty to making false statements to the FBI. The Manafort's and Gates indictments, unsealed on Monday morning, does not make any reference to Russia's influence campaign against the presidential election, but it does allege extensive financial ties between Manafort and Gates and powerful Ukrainians. The Papadopoulos materials, on the other hand, detail the many contacts investigators say he had with Russian-linked operatives. He met at least 2 people, a man and a woman, who the FBI say were working for the Russian government and had boasted to him about the help it could offer the Trump campaign against Clinton. Manafort and Gates turned themselves into the FBI on Monday morning. Papadopoulos' status was unclear. Manafort appeared at the FBI Washington field office just after 8 a.m. with his lawyer, Kevin Downing. Manafort was escorted into the building by an FBI agent. Appearing after his client's plea, however, Downing sounded like his client and the Trump campaign were one and the same. "Well, I think you all saw today that President Donald Trump was correct. There is no evidence that Mr. Manafort or the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian government," Downing said outside federal court per NPR's Miles Parks. He contended that Manafort was merely representing pro-European Union campaigns for the Ukrainian. He added that he was seeking to further democracy and to help the Ukraine come closer to the United States and the EU. He then pointed out that his client's work in Ukraine ended in 2014, over 2 years before Mr. Manafort served in the Trump campaign. He said the indictment was being brought using a very novel theory regarding a federal filing under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. He noted that FARA has been used only half a dozen times in the last 50 years, and with only 1 conviction. He's right that the act is seldom used. Downing then thundered, "The second thing about the indictment that I find myself most ridiculous at the claim that maintaining offshore accounts to bring all your funds to the United States is a scheme to conceal from the United States government is ridiculous." A spokesperson of the special counsel declined to comment to NPR. This article also says the materials were online, and as well as the Papadopoulos court documents. The Ukraine connection. Manafort headed Trump campaign from June to August 2016. He stepped down after reports emerged from his business relationship with pro-Russian leaders in Ukraine, allegedly replete with millions of dollars in cash payments and undisclosed lobbying efforts. The indictment released on Monday charges Manafort and Gates with the extensive use of offshore bank accounts, through which flowed more than $75 million. The document alleged that Manafort laundered more than $18 million of that to conceal it from the U.S. authorities, and that Gates transferred more than $3 million. Manafort grew wealthy over a colorful career in his 4 decades as Republican operative and lobbyist. He worked for Republican campaigns in the late 1970s and early 1980s before moving into the lucrative world of international lobbying, where he teamed up with Roger Stone to found the firm Black, Manafort, Stone, and Kelly. Manafort represented a host of unsavory characters over the years, including Angolan rebel leader Jonas Savimbi, Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos, and Zaire's leader Mobutu Sese Seko. In the early 2000s, Manafort headed to Ukraine to work as an advisor to the pro-Russian politician Viktor Yanukovych, helping him win the presidency in 2010. Yanukovych was overthrown by a wave of popular protest. 4 years later, he fled to Russia. Manafort later became an early backer of Trump, eventually assuming the role of chairman of his insurgent presidential campaign. Trump and the White House have lately downplayed Manafort's role in the role in the 2016 operation, but at their time, their relationship was said to be close. Manafort is the one person in the room that called him Donald. As Republican operative Scott Reed told NPR last year, "It's not Mr. Trump, it's Donald. Come on, Donald, we've got to do the right thing here." A spokesperson for Manafort did not respond to a request for comments. And then it kind of goes over there's the documents they have listed there. Anyone who wants more information on this, I know it was a lengthy thing I read through, but there's been so much information that's come out about this, and I'm not even fully versed in what's happened today or yesterday at the time of this recording. But I encourage anyone just to do their research. Google the Mueller investigation. Google Manafort and Gates. And just keep digging. Don't settle for what anyone in any media is telling. Definitely do your research and get the facts. Look at multiple sources. That's the way to be a well-educated, well-versed person. I guess with that, I kind of want to get out of this whole thing with what's been going on with the Mueller investigation, what's been going on with all these sexual allegations that have come out. And I kind of want to talk about some things that are a little more fun or a little more just general news. New York State has officially put a ban on e-cigarettes in bars and restaurants. This closes the loophole in the Clear Indoor Air Act. So this means that anyone in the state of New York can't use an e-cig in bars, restaurants, common places that they've been to do so, because e-cigarettes were looked at as the cleaner, healthier alternative, even though from some people I've talked to, and I don't know how well researched this is, that it's still equally as bad for you. So I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never used an e-cig. The worst I've done with that is hookah. It's definitely something I'm glad that smoking itself is banned in bars and restaurants, and sometimes that e-cig smell is worse because it's grossly flavored, and I'm just not a fan. So I'm kind of happy that this is going, and we'll see if any other states pick this up moving forward. Also, in the world of fast food, McDonald's has finally announced their successor to the dollar menu. So coming in 2018, they will be offering a lineup of $1, $2, and $3 items. And when I saw this, I was like, okay, so you're putting up a menu. This isn't a new thing. You're like, well, you can get fries for $1, drink for $1, a burger for $2, nuggets for $3, or it doesn't seem to be anything wowing me. It's not like they're offering like a cheaper value meal or something along those lines. It seems like they're just being like, here's our a la carte menu, and here's the prices. It doesn't seem like it's anything crazy to me. I guess moving forward from fast food to another big corporation, Amazon. So Amazon has been reported that they've obtained a pharmacy license in some states to start selling you your prescription drugs through Amazon, which I'm still not sure how I feel about it. It seems kind of ingenious because for the people who use Amazon, you can get everything from a TV to Pop-Tarts sent to you in 2 days if you're an Amazon Prime member. So having them be able to get your prescription medications, or maybe this will lead to getting your prescription medications for your pets, like you can get from like 1-800-PETS or petmeds.org, whatever those websites are. So maybe this will lead to that. I think it's a little weird because it's going to make people more inclined to steal packages, knowing that there's potentially expensive or valuable drugs being sent to you through the mail. So I think it's a little complicated. It's definitely not in the state of Illinois or Indiana as far as I'm aware. So we'll kind of see where this goes. But as I've said and reported earlier, Amazon's been doing a lot of moving and shaking with their acquisitions and things they've been wanting to do. And all this has been equaling a stock surge for Amazon. And this has actually led to Jeff Bezos, the CEO and creator of Amazon, to become the richest man in the world, officially dethroning Bill Gates. So, as of the article, Bezos is $5.1 billion richer than Bill Gates, whose own fortune is $88.7 billion, which puts Jeff Bezos' wealth, personal wealth, not tied to Amazon, in the the low to mid $90 billion, which is wow. Like, who needs that much money? And it's kind of crazy because he's a relatively young. Well, because Amazon hasn't even been around. It's only been around within my lifetime, and even then, it's been like maybe the late '90s, early 2000s that it really started picking up as a place to sell books directly to the person, and then it's just taken off from there. So it's kind of crazy to see that now it's this massive company that does its own TV shows and has like music and movies and all this stuff that they're doing now. So they're definitely branching out and even feel like they're having a faster expansion than Google is. So that's kind of it for Amazon. And also, reported that's kind of funny is that Barack Obama got a jury summons, so he's going to be serving jury duty in Cook County next month, which I think would be crazy if you were on trial for something random in Cook County courts and you see Barack Obama sitting on the bench. You'd be like, I feel like I'd be starstruck. Like, yeah, I did it. I didn't do it. I don't know what to say. The former president's over there judging me. Yeah, that would be me. But thankfully, I live a pretty straight and narrow life, so I'll never have the opportunity to be on the other side with Barack Obama on the jury bench. I know one thing I kind of hyped up in last episode was that the JFK records were going to be released this past week. And I was excited and all this, and then there was an issue and it was delayed a couple days, and then Trump said that he was going to release all the documents, but he was going to redact the names and addresses of the still living individuals mentioned. And so far since this release, there's been no major revelations, no real updates. I don't know if there's just too many documents to sift through, or it's all just random, superfluous information. I know that we're not going to see like a smoking gun or nothing that's going to kind of throw off the conspiracy theorists, but I was kind of expecting more. I haven't really had a chance to even do my own digging through these documents. I'm kind of waiting for some JFK historians or political history buffs to kind of dig through these documents and find something worth reporting. I have plenty of books on JFK now that will definitely keep me busy for the foreseeable future. Let's see. Oh, here's some more fun. As I talked about earlier with Trump and with kind of some stuff that happened on Broadway. So Trump, in his latest kind of distraction effort, he made a tweet about Michael Moore's Broadway show. He said in a tweet, "While not at all presidential, I must point out that the sloppy Michael Moore show on Broadway was a total bomb and was forced to close. Sad." I still don't understand why sometimes he ends his tweets with sad. It seems like it's almost like a robot sitting there going, "What is this? Sad." Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, you don't end statements with sad! Exclamation point. He also says, "while not at all presidential," which is the first time Trump has actually announced that he is not presidential. And at least he's finally admitting it. First step is admitting. So after this tweet, Michael Moore came out saying this was a 12-week limited run, and it ended when it said it was going to end. You must be tweeting. Your tweet must be actually about your presidential campaign, which is a total bomb and will be forced to close early. And then he said that he is now Trump's latest distraction, which I agree. A lot of things seem to happen when something's going negative towards Trump. He tends to spin the news or put something out that distracts from what's currently going on. That was with the whole NFL kneeling issue. That was with the JFK Records Act. That was all to kind of pull focus from what was currently going on, and now this Michael Moore thing, while as we're dealing with these Mueller investigations. Also kind of a fun thing involving Trump's 2016 adversary Hillary Clinton. She was speaking at the Human Rights Campaign dinner, and this is her thing, which I thought was kind of funny. She said, "It does seem to me that in the last few days, at least, Fox News seems to think that's where I live, in the White House, because they spend a disproportionate amount of time talking about impeaching me." And then she goes on to say, "So look, if they want to make a trade, I'd be more than willing." And I think I could speak for the majority of Americans in saying that we would love that if they trade. I know there's some that are not fans of Hillary or Trump and would be opposed to a switch, but I think that anyone would be better than Trump at this point, at least regarding everything that's been happening in the, feel like, the longest 9 months that we've had. Moving forward for that, also speaking of presidents and former presidents, former President Jimmy Carter actually said that he would travel to North Korea on a diplomatic mission if the White House needed him. And President Jimmy Carter, though also in his early 90s, is also still pretty spy. He still does work for Habitat for Humanity, a charity he's been working with for like his whole adult life. And he actually has already been to North Korea before. He went on a mission there in the 90s to, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Pyongyang, which is in North Korea, and struck a deal with Kim Il-sung, who was the grandfather of Kim Jong-un and father of Kim Jong-il, and struck a deal for some reason. I don't remember the details because I was a very young child in the mid-90s. And he also kind of in that same interview, Jimmy Carter said that I think the media has been harder on Trump than any other president, certainly that I've known about. I think they feel free to claim that Trump is mentally deranged and everything else without hesitation. And this led to Trump actually praising Jimmy Carter and the nice things that he said about him and saying, like, thank you, Mr. President. And it seems that all anyone really needs to do is slightly stroke Trump's ego to get on his good side, forever how brief that moment is. And just as easily, if you say something against him, he will condemn you loudly and publicly. So, I would kind of agree with Jimmy Carter. I feel like, yes, a lot of the media has been especially hard on Trump, but I think that's not without warrant. He's definitely done some things, and I feel like we shouldn't just give him a bye just because he's president. He's doing things that are a little deranged, and we should be able to, as media, call him out on that, because when you start believing the media, you end up with a nation without any understanding of what's actually going on, and we can become easily very oppressed. And I think with that, I am done with political and government news, and I actually have some time for a couple fun entertainment news. So as a lot of you know, Stranger Things, the hit Netflix show that's first season came out of nowhere and became one of Netflix's biggest hits. So season 2 just dropped on Friday, and I know a lot of people I know have already been through the whole 9 episodes. I haven't had a chance to watch any of it yet, and I'm probably going to end up watching at least the last couple of season 1 just to kind of catch myself back up before I move into season 2. And this kind of was reported that Stranger Things star Charlie Heaton, who played Jonathan, who was Will's older brother, I believe it was Will, the boy who was trapped in the Upside Down, his older brother, he was actually detained by the U.S. and was unable to be, was refused entry because he tried to sneak in with cocaine from the UK. So they put him on a plane, sent him back, and he missed the entire premiere. So I think it's a little crazy. He's in his 20s. I don't know a whole much about him. I don't think he's done anything before this show, but that's kind of crazy that he would try and sneak cocaine to Los Angeles, where I feel like as a celebrity could probably get easy access to cocaine, so it kind of just screwed himself over in that regard. And another bit of surprising news, at least for me, is that Gotham reported that they've recast Poison Ivy again. As you know, in season 1, Poison Ivy was portrayed by this little redheaded girl, and then in the end, or towards the beginning to early middle of last season, due to her contact with one of the inmates that had some gift, they aged her up like 20 years. Made her a mid-20s, around my age, woman who still had like the kind of the personality and brain of that like 9-year-old girl. And as you recall, towards the end of last season, she went to this this weird Chinese herb medicine person, and she drank a bunch of chemicals that he had in vials to really change her mental and physical state, and you kind of saw her face kind of change a little bit, and it looks like that's probably leading to this new casting where Peyton List is going to be replacing Maggie Geha, Geha. I'm not quite sure how that's pronounced. Gotham's statement is, in the continuing evolution of Poison Ivy's origin story, Ivy Pepper has been transformed once again, taking another step towards becoming the Ivy we know from the comics. Dangerous and a live wire of crazy energy. And they said that this new character will be coming, or I guess evolved character will be coming in early 2018. I don't know, honestly, I don't know how many more seasons Gotham has in it. I know they kind of gave almost a finale at the end of last season with kind of how the show had ended. Because by the time that they filmed the finale, it still was unclear if the show was going to get renewed for another season. So I think they prepared an episode that could work as an ending for the series or a very good season finale. So now they kind of have to keep pushing that envelope, and they've so far brought an amazing Scarecrow and Solomon Grundy, and they've done a lot of stuff so far this season that has been really good. I'm current as of this recording, and I'm kind of excited where they seem to go with this, but it seems like they still feel like they haven't gotten Ivy quite right. They've had the same actress play Catwoman since season 1, and she's doing a fantastic job. And I understand that having a 9-year-old girl play Ivy is only going to be 12 now, and it just maybe that doesn't work for their context of the story. But I feel like keep changing her is going to get hard to follow her story. Or they could have easily kept the actress from last year and maybe given her a darker hairstyle, changed her personality a little bit. I really liked her last season. I liked her kind of her spunk and her personality, and she was just a lot of fun. So we'll kind of see how this... I'm going to go in open-minded because Gotham hasn't had too many missteps since I've been watching the show. Another thing that's kind of funny that's also kind of Halloween-y, which is kind of this episode in general because it's going to be released on Halloween. And it was Gwyneth Paltrow's Halloween costume, which I think wins the award of best Halloween costume ever. And it's relatively simple to produce. So her Halloween costume, for those who haven't seen the picture, is her with a box around her head that's looks just open and just sitting there, and she's dressed in a kind of a very like 90s attire. And it was ingenious because she played her character from Seven, which is the movie that starred Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, and Kevin Spacey about people who were being killed or tortured involving the 7 deadly sins. And spoilers, it ended with Gwyneth Paltrow's head being cut off, put in a box for Brad Pitt's character who played her husband, opening up and officially becoming Wrath by killing Kevin Spacey's character, who was the villain of that movie. So it's kind of nice, and I think that definitely wins it because I don't think I've ever seen that done before, and I'm pretty impressed, actually. And it's relative time, she just kind of put a hole in a box and put her head in it. So kudos to Gwyneth Paltrow. I know she's done a little crazy stuff lately too, but I loved her in the Marvel movies, and I love some of her previous work. It's just her personal life and her personal views on things are a little kind of out there for me. And speaking of out there, Cambridge University has released Stephen Hawking's PhD thesis online on their website and actually crashed the servers because of the amount of people who wanted to download it. And I can't understand people wanting to read anyone's PhD thesis, or who could even understand Stephen Hawking's PhD thesis from God knows how many years ago. So I think a lot of people just want to say they downloaded it because, oh, I downloaded Stephen Hawking's PhD thesis. Like, yeah, do you know what any of its context is or what it's about? Do you have the knowledge, understanding to actually read this and understand what he's talking about? And my vote is no. I think people are just doing it to do it. It seems like whenever there's a flood of information, people always kind of want to jump on it, and I kind of disagree. I think if you have a general understanding or an interest in what he had to say, then by all means download it. But if you just want to download it to say you downloaded it and claim like, oh, I know what it's about, and you really don't, then just stop. And kind of one last thing, I kind of saw this shortly before recording. For those who have any interest in the Arrowverse, it looks like one of their stunt performers died unexpectedly, and it looks like it wasn't tied to anything on the Arrowverse shows regarding a stunt. It looks like it might have just been a sudden illness or an accident. There's not really a whole lot of details out there. But Stephen Amell, the actor who plays Oliver Queen, who's kind of the original CW superhero character from the most recent run, creating the kind of leading into the whole Arrowverse that me and a lot of people on this network and a lot of listeners enjoy. So he came out in a video saying that kind of announced this GoFundMe that's for this actor, this stunt person's memorial. I'm gonna pull the information up here just so I don't forget anything. So this is in regards to Clay Virtue, who is a stunt performer for Stunts Canada. So there's this GoFundMe for the Clay Virtue Memorial Fund to help his family through this incredibly difficult time. And I thought this is Stephen Amell's statement. It says, "I thought we could help too. I got a movie-sized poster of this year's crossover artwork and got everybody to sign it. Everybody, even the people who aren't on this poster, even though there definitely should have been. Here's the deal. $5 enters you for a chance to win it. $10 enters you twice. 100 enters you 20 times, and so on. This means a ton to Clay's family, and it means a great deal to me too." And he posted a link, which is GoFundMe.com/ClayVirtue. Or you just go to Stephen Amell's Facebook page and access this. I've donated to this, not just because there's a chance to win an autographed poster by all of the Arrowverse cast, even though that would be quite a thing to have hang on your wall, but it's also for a great cause for an actor, or a stunt actor who's leaving behind a wife and a very young daughter, who I believe is only a few months old, who's really never going to know that. It's kind of sets them up for a while, and last I checked, the amount of money they've raised for the GoFundMe is, I think, over $160,000 and well over the $50,000 they were hoping to raise. I think the push by the Arrowverse actors and Stephen Amell is what led to this being. But I know a lot of people are just entering it because they think it's their chance to get a piece of autographed memorabilia, which is the same thing when some actors put out like a Kickstarter for something they're working on. They'll auction off autograph materials, and I know I have a poster on my wall of the Arrowverse from a couple years ago, and I have autographs of Melissa Benoist and Grant Gustin. So if I wanted to be fantastic, but I'm definitely doing this more to support someone who lost their life and left behind people, and his family and friends are still dealing with that loss. So I guess I'm kind of ending the show on a sombering note. But just everyone, as we kind of go through Halloween, and if you're listening to this, definitely be respectful to the kids tonight that are going to be out trick-or-treating, or kind of out with their family, or there's going to be young kids and high school kids that are going to probably get into some shenanigans. Just be respectful to them. Don't let them obviously get away with crazy or destruction of property, any of that stuff, but just respect your fellow man and kind of treat others the way you'd like to be treated. I love doing this show, and I love being a part of it, of this network. And I encourage every one of my listeners to listen to all the other shows on the Journey into Comics network. I know there's been some new shows coming out. I know there's that Brews with Dudes, or Dudes with Brews new show from a friend of the network, starting up a show involving craft beers and talking with friends about it. And I know we have the best of, and there's always the classics like Journey into Comics, Journey into Wrestling, Butt Stuff, Podcastrophe, Foodies Watching Movies, which is a show I've also co-host on, and like Game X Podcast and all these other shows on our network. So I encourage everyone to listen. There's pretty much a show a day you could listen to, including the best of, which will give you a taste. As always, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Puhr Report. Haven't posted a lot lately. Work's been kind of hectic, and I'm about to travel for it, but hopefully episode 10 or 11 I'm going to be recording from Colorado, which will be kind of interesting. My first kind of road show, recording from a hotel room there. And I actually still have some ideas that I want to do to make episode 10 kind of special and different, so I hope you enjoy that. I I also have those TV premiere reviews up on Patreon that you can access at patreon.com/journeyintocomics. And you can also get early access to the episodes there for not me, but in other network shows. $1 gets you early access, and $3 gets you access to that exclusive content, which I know is not just stuff I'm doing, but stuff from Journey into Comics, stuff from Butt Stuff, stuff from a lot of their shows and putting out their exclusives. So yeah, that's it. Have a happy Halloween, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everyone.